All right, 16th day of April 2014. Time for PPM, Poetic Phenomenological Meditation number 63, I believe we're up to. Let me just check on the website, the blog site. Yep, 63. And these are the days of brevity, because I had a glance at what I wrote 10 years ago today, and it's fairly brief. All things considered. Before I finish that thought, though, I do want to note that today was the snow returned. So I've been mentioning to you, we've been having a great spring here in this spring of 2014. Warm days. And for me, if there's warmth in the first 2 weeks of April, then spring is thumbs up. And I've been mentioning to people that last year, spring came a little slower. It was colder days through April. And I remember I'd wake up every morning and look out my window with this feeling that had it snowed again. This morning I woke up and all of a sudden I kind of felt by the lighting that wait, and then I looked outside and sure enough it had snowed a good half an inch. Just snow covered everywhere. And just now as I was coming back in the house, I had to get out the snow shovel and break the ice that had accumulated on the steps. So you never know what's going to happen. That's for sure. So anyway, as I was about to say that so I'm still working through the Allegory of the Cave. In the last couple of days, I've been working on the truth of concealment through Arendt's Crisis in Education. And I noticed that yesterday's was a fairly brief video that I made. The reading just pretty much read right straight through, and then had very little commentary. And I just kind of glanced at it, and you know, it's on the shorter side of writing, and this is the way it was. You know, when you write every day for a year, and particularly when you get locked into a slow, steady presentation, discussion, description, analysis, interpretation of a particular piece of work, and in this case Plato's Allegory of the Cave from Book 7 of the Republic, there are going to be days where you're just sort of picking up where you left off the day before and moving a little bit, right, a couple of small steps, and then you're done. And you don't go into the zone, or you don't get into this place. Earlier on, if you go back and listen to the first two, pick a meditation from the first 2 weeks, I was just getting underway, and I'd find myself going into the zone, and I was measuring it this year, the commemoration. I've been at that time, the first 2 weeks, I would say, well, it looks like today I was in the zone, or I wasn't in the zone. At this point, 2 months into it, focused on a particular theme within a particular text. It wasn't so much whether or not I get into the zone, so much as if I did the work. It was more about a daily work, and it felt more like working out on a daily basis than anything else. So I'm picking up then the theme where we left it off yesterday was the quotation from Arendt, again taking up this one side of what I call the twofold play of being's sort of disclosure to us, the truth of concealment and the truth of disclosure, actually. That's kind of the problem with the languages, is that short of silence, as soon as one is speaking or one is using symbols and language, sounds, there's always you're in the ontology of disclosure, right? So something is being revealed, something is being you're in this space of existence, and so to talk of the twofold play as the way in which we experience, I guess, is the best way to put it, the way that we experience being. Right, so focusing on the one side of the twofold play, which is the experience with the truth of concealment, that's been what I've been focused on. And yesterday I left it off with the quotation from Arendt. The quotation is, "Conservatism, in the sense of conservation, is the essence of the educational activity, whose task is always to cherish and protect something. The child against the world against the child, the new against the old against the new." All right, so picking it up, this date, the 16th of April, 2004, 10 years later, reading it. The cave as the instructional event of schooling represents what we initially identified as the saying of the nothing, which releases the learner onto the freedom of discovery, the way of learning. If learning is the discovery that comes with the adventure of inquiry, the seeking that is propelled by steadfast openness, then this openness is prepared and conserved by the concealment which is insisted upon the child. To insist upon concealment is to enable the child to be free from the alterity of the other, the unstable ground of the clearing, the twofold play of being's processual unfolding. The truth of concealment is the negative liberty imposed upon the child in the sheltering security of the domestic habitat. She's free from the responsibility to the world, to others, from responsibility itself. In being sheltered and protected from the twofold play, she is cared for, and care for self is the modality where she finds herself. The negative liberty insisted upon the child in schooling by the domestic habitat protects and cultivates the modality of self-absorption that is required for the acquisition of her unified mode of communication. We call the formation of this unified mode identity formation, and recognize how and why this emerges within the secure confines of the domestic habitat. The captors insist upon the masquerade of the one side, of the concealment of unpredictability and the dynamic process, and captivate the children with a performance that over time becomes predictable. The formation of the habits of seeing, presented in the allegory as the unilateral imposition of content, the shadows, is the real outcome of schooling. What is prepared then is the possibility of seeing, hearing, and speaking, the capacity to enter into the reciprocal exchange of poetic dialogue. What is conserved is the capacity to receive the tidings, to respond to the evocative saying, to raise the question, to be made questionable, and offer interpretation. The preparation is offered by insisting upon the acquisition of language, of communicative action. Without the development of this capacity, it will be impossible for the apprentice to be called to learning. To receive the call requires that we are capable of hearing. To respond to the call requires that we are capable of speaking. To be turned around, attuned, and engaged in the process of inquiry requires that we are capable of seeing. In the first part of the story, if the first part of the story offers us a depiction of the necessity of restrainment, the negative liberty that is imposed upon the child, this concealment that insists upon freedom from others and thereby preserves the capacity to be with others, then the first part shows us how the twofold play is present all along the way from schooling through learning. Thus, what Heidegger calls a central relation between education and truth does not emerge only at the first turning when the chains are removed, but present from the beginning. Within the context of our exploration of being and learning, this is important because it identifies how the truth of concealment represents the hiding of learning within schooling and shows why education, as the preparation of learning, preserves or conserves natality, the fact of freedom. Freedom does not appear ex nihilio, but is always already present in potency, retained as the not yet possibility that requires only the proper conditions and relations to emerge. Thus, when Heidegger suggests that real freedom only appears in the third part of the story, we must be careful to understand this to imply that freedom is now in the process of being actualized. Freedom is not a phenomenon that's created nor imposed, but liberated. And paideia, the process of accomplishing the turning around of the whole person, initiates this liberation that is made possible by proper preparation. The truth of concealment is thus identified as in the conservation of freedom. And that's how it ends. I'm glad that I ended that way because I wasn't sure where I was going here when I said that in the first part of the story we're offered the necessity of restrainment, the negative liberty that is imposed on the child. This concealment insists upon freedom from others and thereby preserves the capacity to be with others. And this is where I wanted to come back to this point. This first part shows how the twofold play is present all along the way from schooling through learning. Because the twofold play is always, period. So it's just a matter of emphasis, or the manner in which the twofold play is, and that we experience it. So the last two sentences sort of helped me to understand what I was going for here. That, I'm sort of departing when Heidegger says that real freedom only appears in the third part of the story. We have to be careful, because freedom is not something that's created, but liberated. Paideia is the process of accomplishing the turning around of the whole person, initiate this liberation, but the truth of concealment is thus identified as a conserve. So freedom is there in pure potentiality. That's kind of the point there. And there was another thing I wanted to come back to. Oh, right. And so in terms of pure potentiality, then that's sort of the whole emphasis of this particular meditation. And I'm going to end it there because I have a phone call coming in.